Gentlemen, it is that time again. Yes, you've been waiting for it. It's the beginning of your local Rotary program here. All righty. Next up, is it kind of the flag salute time? Isn't that what we do first? It is indeed. And Niall, do you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty, fantastic job. You all know that. That is so good. Okay, up next we've got the front men, Michael and Stu and Tim and Dave and Trudy and Sheila and others, except some of us aren't all here. I mean, not all of us are here. Well, those of us who are here, the ones who are here, yeah, are here. All right, what are we doing?
Yeah. Hi, folks. We've got a talk today about wheelchairs, and we thought of wheel songs. This is actually a river paddle boat song, but we like the wheels anyway. Proud Mary. 1, 2, 3, 4. Left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day. And I never lost 1 minute of sleep, worrying about the way things might have been. Big wheels keep on turning, proud Mary keep on burning. Rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. Played a lot of plays in Memphis, bumped a lot of tame down in New Orleans, but I never saw the good side of the city till I hitched a ride on the riverboat queen. Big wheels keep on turning, right? We keep on burning. Rolling, 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 rolling on the river. Rolling, 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 rolling on the river.
All right, to the trained professionals, thank you very much. And to the rest of us, we won't quit our day jobs. All righty, up next, Will, have you got a thought for us? A small thought.
Hello, Rotarians. As Rotarians, we mentor a lot of other people. And sometimes we don't even realize the impact we have on others. So for today, I have a story about a mentor and a student. The mentor was John Wooden. The student was Bill Walton, who died recently. Bill grew up in San Diego and was the best high school basketball player when he graduated from high school in 1972. So he went to UCLA to play for John Wooden and UCLA, which were the defending national champions. John Wooden was a mild-mannered coach from Indiana, and it would appear he'd have his hands full with Bill, who was as outspoken as any athlete ever. Bill's first year playing for John Wooden, he was National Player of the Year, the team was undefeated, and they won the national championship. When Bill returned to school and the first practice the next season, he had a beard and very long hair. 2 things against John Wooden's rules. Coach Wooden pulled young Bill aside. Before Coach Wooden could even say anything, Bill spoke. Coach, I know what you're going to say. I know your rules about facial hair and long hair. But Coach, I know you are a believer in individual rights. And I strongly believe in my individual right to have whatever hair length I want. Coach Wooden then surprised young Bill. Bill, you are absolutely right. You have the right to wear your hair any length you want it. It's entirely your choice. Just as it's my choice to make the rules about the team I coach. Good luck to you, Bill. We're sure going to miss you this year. Bill Walton left practice, raced down to the corner barber, went inside and said, "Take it all off," and returned to practice in less than an hour. Over time, Coach Wooden became one of the most important people in Bill's life. Coach Wooden died when he was 97, but for the last many, many years of his life, Bill Walton visited him at least once a week and said he was one of the most profound people in his life. Later, at the end of Wooden's life, people often asked him, "Coach, would you really have kicked Bill off the team if he hadn't shaved and cut his hair?" With a twinkle in his eye, Coach Wooden responded, "All that matters is that Bill thought I would." Thank you, Rotarians.
Clever.
Isn't that the truth? It's what they think you're going to do. All right. Who helps us do this? Well, we've got Will on the Spur Reporter. Kathy is a Spur publisher. Don is taking photographs. Dennis is doing audio visual. Debbie greeted us. Did everyone get greeted? Okay, good. Did you check your little box to make sure that you're counting, toward your attendance? And that's wonderful. Wow, that's full service. So thank you for doing that. And of course, Jeff, are you doing Zoom? Yes, yet he's here and he's on Zoom. All right. Okay, Trex and Bob are our sergeants at arms. Kathy is our web. I kept thinking it couldn't get worse. The name changes every week, and I thought, we finally reached. And I said, no, we clearly haven't. All righty. And public outreach is Kelly Bowers. Okay, what do we got next? Introduction of visiting Rotarians and guests on Zoom. Jeff? No, so on Zoom. Do we have anything on Zoom that is visiting anything? We have no visitors of any type, kind, or shape on Zoom. Alrighty, up next, we've got.
Oh my gosh, we have Gary Swaggerly. But before I introduce Gary, I want to say thank you for singing my song. That came in kindergarten, and it was the greatest thing, all about Roland. So thank you for that. Gary Swaggerly, president of the Pleasanton Downtown Club in 2022, a good-looking man. His wife is so awesome and wonderful, and Gary's okay too. So thank you, Gary, for being here.
Hey, Gary. All right.
Okay. Did you have a visiting Rotary? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go first, CJ. Okay. Stand up, Richard. And I should also introduce you, Dave, as a visiting Rotary. You're a visiting Rotary. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Richard Flanders, who honestly, I haven't said this to you, Richard. It's the first time I've seen you casual. He always wears a suit.
That's what happened when we become governor.
Yeah, and he is past district governor, and he is still very engaged, and wheelchairs is his passion. You can tell by his shirt, he's got a special shirt. He is past president and all those things of Pleasanton North Rotary. So please welcome Richard Flanders.
Hello, Richard.
And not to be outdone, our guest speaker today is Dave Behring, and he is member of the newly merged Danville San Ramon Rotary Club. So he's in a different district, but he's an awesome Rotarian. Please welcome Dave Behring.
Hi, Dave.
Needing
DJ.
no introduction. Phil Dean. Phil Dean was in the biology department at the lab when the lab was doing a human genome. And was there for quite a while before that. He's been the president of our club. He is a member of the Silicon Valley E-Club. And he received from the National Rotarian Foundation a Distinguished Service Award for his service to that foundation. So welcome, Phil.
Welcome, Phil. All right. Any
President-
other? Oh, we've got, oh my God.
President Mark, fellow
Yes, yes,
Rotarians.
yes, yes.
It is my honor to introduce a visiting Rotarian from the Dublin Club past president, electrical contractor and Rotarian extraordinaire, Bob Tutnott.
Hello, Bob. Yeah, we've got to get you all in order here. So the name comes at the end and then our response is hello. Okay, right in the next beat. Because otherwise we sound like a mob. It's supposed to be like one thing here. See if we can get another shot. All right, do we have any other visiting Rotarians in the room? How about visitors who are not Rotarians?
President
Okay.
Mark and fellow Rotarians, I would like, you can stand up, please. I would like to introduce Scott Preston. Scott is a Livermore resident who's come by to investigate our club and find out more about Rotary.
Ah,
And-
well, welcome.
And
Other way around. It's us. So
Scott, Scott is retired from the pharmaceutical industry.
Ah, very good. All right. Well, thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else visiting us today? All right. Up next, announcements. And let's see, before we come out to the room here, is Glenn on Zoom?
Yes, I am.
All right, Glenn, do you want to give us a very short announcement about Ready?
I do. Thanks, Mark. Hopefully you can hear me. So the Livermore Valley School District is back in session as of last week. And that means that our Club Ready program also swings into action. And so I'm making a special appeal today for those who, not only the repeat Ready mentors who've participated over the past, many of whom saw my message last week and have agreed to participate again this year, but I'd also like to make a special appeal this year. And let me just provide 30 seconds of context. The pandemic has really kind of taken a lot of the air out of the sails of middle school education. And those of us in the Ready program have witnessed this and dealt with this very up close and personal over the past couple of years. And so we'd really like to have more members, experienced club members, newer club members, sign up to participate with Ready, give it a chance. It's a mentoring and a tutoring program. You have an opportunity to make an immense difference in the life of a student. And as part of that, I would make a special appeal if we have any members who are even casually capable of speaking Spanish. We really need you. One of the impediments that we find is many of our students are recently arrived to this country and are not fluent in English, and it sets up a significant barrier in the relationships that we can develop with them and the outcomes that we have. So I want to make that special appeal. We meet Mondays at 2:45 at Junction Avenue. Please show up this coming Monday, August 26th, if you're interested, or just email me if you're interested and would like to know more. Finally, Bob Cowan. Let's give Bob a huge hand. Bob has been the leader of Ready for many years. He's passing the baton. I have decided to take on the reins of the program, and I will do the best I can to maintain the tremendous improvements and outcomes that we have with the students that we mentor. So that's it. That's it for me, Mark. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Glenn. So first of all, Bob, thank you very much. And twice as clappy, thank you to Glenn. Glenn saw what Bob had done and sort of was a little concerned about taking on the obligations of this along with everything else and stepped up to do it. So yay to those within the club that step up to step outside their comfort zone, even when it's not going to be a perfect fit for all of the other things going on in life. And the good news is he's backed up by some other people in Ready who will step in as needed there. So it's going to be a fantastic year. And if you've got any questions at all, reach out to Glenn because it's a fantastic program. If you are interested in doing good and being right there and having a one-on-one with somebody, it's amazing to sort of see how the difference that you can make on there. Up next, we've got Community Service Day on September 7th, 2024. So a couple things going on there. So Loretta, are you in the room? All right, on Loretta's behalf here. So we will have some items going out for you on this one a little later in the week. And I'll get that to Joel so he can send that out. So a couple things. The first thing is that President Sheila's project, you'll remember what that was, which was the communication boards for those who were developmentally impacted and not verbal as young children. Those folks are going to have a way to be able to interact with their peers. And so LARPD is placing the first of the communication boards that we helped fund in May Nissan Park on essentially September 7th, starting at 8:30 in the morning. So if you want to come out and see President Sheila's project go into the ground and be unveiled, come on out. It's a fantastic project. It helps kids. It helps those who are developmentally behind in their verbal skills, and it helps them be part of the community. So it's a win-win, win-win-win. And even more fun, it was funded with our district designated funds that returned to us. So remember all of those things where you donated, that money goes away, does amazing things, and then comes a small portion of that comes back. This is one of the places that it ended up. And it's a three-way partnership between us, the LARPD Foundation, and LARPD itself. Immediately following, there will be a park spruce up project at May Nissan. So sign up for that if you're so interested, and that'll be in the email. Two other things are that if that's not your cup of tea and you'd like to do other things, there are two other projects, which is one is Junction Avenue School. That actually shows up on the Community Service Day website. And if that one happens to be full, right now there's tons of room in that one. The last one would be Hegeman Ranch. And that one, they can take an enormous number of people. So that is, if you want to be out and about and help. And Irv, you've got your hand up, but you've got no microphone, so you cannot speak until we get a microphone to you. Otherwise, under penalty of law, I lose my presidentship.
The question is, on September 7th, should people wear something that says Rotary on it?
Oh my gosh, Irv, that's a fantastic question. So if you had a shirt like me, for example, you'd bought that from Christie perhaps, or anything, a hat, a vest, shoes, a belt buckle, a cape that had Rotary on it, any of those things that you might own, please put those on, because one of the things is when we're out being helpful in the community and doing good things, so be on your best behavior when you're wearing our paraphernalia. It's a great way to sort of say, what is Rotary? Because strangely enough, not everybody knows. So Irv, that's a fantastic idea. Wear your stuff when you are out and about doing what we do, which is giving back to the community. All right, any other questions about Community Service Day? More to come on that. And President Sheila.
I just wanted to share now, the city is going to have a little BBQ out at the college
It is so
afterwards
true.
to feed all of you and thank you for doing the good things that you'll be doing that day in the community. So that information I think is going to be circulated as well. We can probably attach that link.
We certainly could. So in the olden days, you'll remember that we were out cooking away. The city's decided to actually follow Alameda County Health Department rules for some reason. I guess they don't want to poison thousands of volunteers. So they will be taking care of that, and we will be free to volunteer for other Community Service Day projects. So we're super excited about that, but do come out and eat and drink at the college afterwards. We'll try and get some information out on that as well. And if you have any questions, you can go City of Livermore, Community Service Day, pull up all of the information, all the projects. All righty. Any other questions on Community Service Day? All right. Next week's presentation, Alan Burnham is going to talk to us about climate change, science, and philosophy. I think those are all strung together. It's not climate change, comma, science and philosophy. It's climate change, science, and philosophy. So that sounds interesting just on its face, doesn't it? All righty. But before we can get to next week, we have this week. And this week, we've got the Wheelchair Foundation. All righty. So you might have looked on your tables and seen there is some information there. Now, oddly, I think we're going to hear more about the Wheelchair Foundation on this one. It's about wheelchairs and a foundation to provide wheelchairs. But there's even more than that in this. So up next, is David going to chat with us? Who's our speaker this afternoon here? All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, it's good to see many friends. It's been a while. It's good to see the Web Mama. I didn't know she's go by the name of Web Mama. She was my lieutenant governor when I was district governor. There are two Pats, Pat Coyle, Pat McNanaman. They were both in my administration when I was governor. Irv Stowers, Phil Dean, Bob Tucknut. But anyway, I'm here to introduce our speaker. I've known our guest speaker for many years, and we normally have breakfast together about every other month. And he's a good friend. Frankly, he's a good friend with our district, Rotary District 5170. When I was governor-elect, I called David Behring and asked to meet him because I wanted to have wheelchair as my district project during my year as district governor. So I went to his Rotary Club. It was called Rotary Club of Danville Sycamore back then. And I met him there for breakfast. He's a past president of that club. And he's also a past assistant governor in our neighboring district, which is 5160. I showed up, he bought me breakfast, and I informed him that I wanted to raise a container of wheelchairs as the district project during my year. And I wanted to have them distributed in Mexico, where many Rotarians from our district could go there to distribute the wheelchairs. And he told me at that time that the wheelchair costs $150 per wheelchair, and a container has 280 wheelchairs. So we needed to raise $42,000 for one container of wheelchairs. I felt nervous. How am I going to raise $42,000 in one single year? He made me feel better because he told me that he would donate $21,000 toward the $42,000 that we need to raise. Well, at the end of that Rotary year, we end up raising 6 containers of wheelchairs district-wide. That's 1,700 new wheelchairs, $252,000, and we have distributed wheelchairs in 5 different countries. And we could not have been so successful without the help of the Rotarians and Rotary clubs all over the district, and with the help of our speaker. And this year, we are going to go to Mexico City, September 20 to 22nd, and we're distributing 1 container of wheelchairs at the National Basilica of Our Lady Guadalupe in Mexico City. And we're about $8,000 short of our 8th container since my year as district governor. So I will not forget the generosity of our speaker. He has been helping us not only with wheelchairs, but also with any events that our district has had at the Black Hawk Museum. David Behring is the president of the Wheelchair Foundation. He was past president of the Black Hawk Museum. He's the man responsible to bring the Spirit of Old West exhibit at the Black Hawk Museum, which is on the 2nd floor if you have been there. And many people do not know, but David used to be the president of the Seattle Seahawks when his dad owned the Seahawks back in the 90s. And he's also has a law degree. He's a graduate of the University of Miami. He's smart enough not to be a lawyer, but he has a law degree. And he's also a graduate of Princeton. He majored in history. He loved to travel all over the world looking at military sites and also the historical sites. And he was on the board of the National Smithsonian Museum. of American history and natural history. David is married to his lovely wife, May. He has 2 children and 2 grandchildren who are just new. But David, before you start, I know you're going to get some gift from this club, but I want to present you with the shirt I'm wearing because we really appreciate your help with our wheelchair project throughout our district. This is for you. Please welcome David Behring.
Well, thank you, Richard. I wanted to make certain that I acknowledged you. He's one of the most successful district governors we've ever had when it comes to wheelchairs. And, he told you the story that I was going to tell about, starting out with 1, then 3. And every time I picked up the phone, David, I've got 5 containers now. So he just did a phenomenal job. And I know your club was heavily involved and we appreciate it very, very much. Rotary's played an absolutely essential, integral role in our success. So we started back in 2000. We've done 1.2 million wheelchairs in just about every country. I'll show you a map. And except for Western Europe has a lot of socialized medicine. They don't have the need. And of those 1.2 million, Rotary has donated over 1/4. So like I said, they play a big role. They're also often our boots on the ground. One of the questions we always get asked is, how do you guys figure out who gets the wheelchairs? We never determine that. We get calls, we get letters from people all over the world, from disabled associations in Central America, Asia, Africa, wherever it might be. And they said, we have this profound need for wheelchairs. Can you help us? And we'll start working with Rotary clubs, and a Rotary club in that area will often play a role. They'll help with the importation. They'll set up the distribution. They'll help find all the recipients. They get detailed logs, Jose Gonzalez, age 10, certain neuromuscular disease. This guy fell out of a coconut tree cutting something and broke his back. So they tell us all the recipients, their ages, and why they need a wheelchair. If you break your leg, you're not going to get a wheelchair. It has to be some form of a permanent disability. So we rely heavily on Rotary. And Frank Devlin, he was the first one to really get involved when he became friends with my father. And he said, we've been eradicating polio. This is way back 20 years ago, and we're near the end. And we see how many polio survivors there are in the world. It's estimated somewhere around 20 or 25 million. So those people need help, and providing wheelchairs is a way of doing it. And I'll tell you this, I've been doing this for about 23 years now. When I first started, I saw polio survivors all the time, whether it was Mexico, Guatemala, Peru. In the last couple of years, we don't come across many. We might give out 200 wheelchairs. There might be 2 maximum, and they're older. They might be 25, 35, 45 years old. We don't see children. And that's a testament to the success of everybody in this room and all Rotarians. So it's important that we keep pushing to get polio completely eradicated. We can't really get into Afghanistan. It's a very difficult country. My dad went one time. We gave out 3,000 wheelchairs way back 2005 during the war. And just a quick story, my dad was supposed to, he couldn't take his plane. So he had to stop. They put him on a military plane, took him into Kabul. They were going to do a distribution in a marketplace, downtown Kabul. On the flight, the senior intelligence officer comes up to my dad and he said, Mr. Behring, we've got to change the plans. And he goes, oh, what's that? We can't do Kabul. And he says, oh, why not? He said, we have very reliable intelligence. There's going to be a IED, some type of a bomb going off in that square. And we've decided instead to move you to a secure fort outside Kabul. And you're going to have to go there in one of our Humvees. So my dad would tell this story about racing across the desert. The guy's got a 50 caliber machine gun. He's in the back going up and down about 60 miles an hour. They get to the fort. They come inside. This big bus comes up with about 40 people on board. And about a third of the people are missing legs, one or both legs. And they're helping them off the bus. They're still screening them, metal detectors and everything else to make certain they don't have any explosive or a weapon. And he would watch these Marines lift guys with no legs into wheelchairs. And a lot of the Marines would end up crying, just watching how many of these people have been disabled. And it's not their fault. These aren't Taliban. These are people that they're in a marketplace at the wrong time. A bomb goes off and the shrapnel goes everywhere. you'll hear 10 people killed, but there might be 50 people injured. So the civil war that goes on in countries causes so many problems. It's one of the major causes of disability. If we take a look at Ukraine right now, we've been able to get 3 containers of wheelchairs into Ukraine. It is not easy. It's long, it's difficult, it's expensive, but the need there is phenomenal. You can see how this war is taking place. There's got to be at least 100,000 severely wounded civilians and soldiers in Afghanistan. So we have to ship them up into Poland. Then they come across, then they have to cross into Ukraine, and they'll go to Eastern Ukraine. There's a constant worry about bombs coming in, missiles, rockets, whatever, hitting a vehicle. So it's a very dangerous job. And we actually have a past district governor in North Carolina named Frank Dean. He's been a big supporter of ours for 20 years. He spent 40 years in the military. He's got a group of other military guys and 4 or 5 civilians. They are in Ukraine right now delivering wheelchairs. And he said, these people need our help. And, you know, my friends and I want to be there for them. So it's incredible to see that type of a passion. So he mentioned that I was president of the Seattle Seahawks. My father owned the team, and I loved football. And it was great. I never got the Super Bowl ring. I got to spend 5 years up there, but life takes changes. My father sold the team. He had the money from the sale. He didn't know what to do with it. Do he start it into business? What does he get into? And he had been traveling a lot across the world, got into philanthropy, spent a lot of time in Africa, Eastern Europe. He knew the need, not so much for wheelchairs, but just that people needed education, medical supplies. So he would always go to the local hospitals, get them to donate stuff. He would load up 20 boxes of textbooks, 20 boxes of medical supplies, and take them to these countries. Then he was asked on a hunting trip, can you take some stuff to Romania? And he said, sure, I'm gonna do some boar hunting in Romania. So they loaded up his plane, and in that plane were 5 wheelchairs, along with walkers and all types of other equipment. And they asked him to stay and see the wheelchairs be given out. And as he watched them, he said, I never had any idea a wheelchair could mean this much. And he said, one old man really struck him. This guy was probably, you can't tell sometimes in these countries, you know, they might be 60, but they look 85. And this guy was kept in a back area, couldn't walk, hadn't been able to walk for years. And he said, all I want to do is go out in the sunshine and smoke a cigarette with my buddies. And so he got his wheelchair, he went outside, his buddies got around him, he started crying. And so my dad watched this. Then he had a woman come up to him at that same delivery. And she came up and she said, for years, I wanted to die. I haven't been able to do anything. I can't go anywhere. But now that you gave me this wheelchair, I don't want to die anymore. I want to live. And so my dad said he came home from that trip, and these 2 things were an epiphany for him. He said, you know, we don't think about that in the United States. We've got great, whether it's Medicare that I have now, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room, or you got good insurance. You can go, and if something happens, you need a wheelchair, you need an operation, you get it. It doesn't work that way in about half the world. They have no safety net, nothing to fall back on. If something happens and they get severely injured, they're screwed. And their family ends up being the big caregiver. They got to carry them everywhere, carry the child to school, carry the woman to the marketplace. So their lives are drastically impacted, and the people around them have to dedicate a lot of time to make certain that, you know, little Jose can go to school, or somebody else can go to their job. You know, they might have some type of a job where they can still work even though they don't have mobility. So that wheelchair gave him that independence. And then he had countless people say, you know, you gave me dignity, you know, dignidad in Spanish, that before I crawled on the ground, before I had to be carried everywhere. Now I can move myself from here over there by myself because of this wheelchair. So he saw that this was something important. It wouldn't just impact this guy's life, but it would impact his mother, his father, his brother, his sister, everybody that helped to care for him. So that's why he started it. And life takes strange change. You know, life is like a river. It's always moving and changing, and there's ups and downs. And so he took a lot of his money and said, I'm going to start becoming philanthropic. He said, I'm at a stage where I've had a lot of business success. Now it's time to give back. You know, it's never too late, whatever. because he was driven by business most of his life. So he worked with the Smithsonian back in Washington. He got heavily involved with natural history, American history. And if you go back there, you can see his name on the walls. But the wheelchairs became his passion. And he dedicated the rest of his life towards doing as much as he could to provide mobility around the world. And he passed away about 5 years ago. So we're carrying on that tradition. I didn't even start the PowerPoint yet. Sorry about that. So that was my father over in Vietnam. The map of the world. So like I said, 156 countries, or maybe there's what, 190, Richard probably knows. How many countries have Rotary? Somewhere around 190. So we're in 156 countries. So, and over the years, my father met a lot of famous people. He was friends with different presidents and countries, one of whom was Nelson Mandela, the King of Spain, President down in Peru, President Guatemala, Mexico. The guy in Mexico, President Fox, came to his house many times. We did a lot of distributions with President Fox. And he was always impressed with Nelson Mandela. He said you could see the special compassion and kindness in his eyes, especially when he was around children. And so it was just meeting people like that that opened up doors that we could do so much. He would say, I want you to bring as many wheelchairs as you can to South Africa to help my people. And I mentioned Rick King. So Rick is with Sherry here. Rick went on a number of wheelchair distribution trips over the years with us. And this, we didn't plan. We were in the Bahamas. I wasn't in the Bahamas, but we had a group in the Bahamas, and all of a sudden Prince William showed up and he said, you know, I'd like to come out and help. And so he came out and talked to a few people that were in wheelchairs. Another past president, Jennifer Jones, our first female president. I think we're going to have many more. We got so many female district governors that are going up now, they're outnumbering the men. And this was one of my favorite photos. This was in Monterrey, Mexico, and we're going to do a big trip. I know, Richard, you guys have already gone to Monterrey, right? 5170. And I've already gone 6 times with 5160. We're going to go another time in March. So if anybody's interested, it's not restricted to 5160. So you've got 4 past presidents of Rotary International. Frank Devlin on the left. All 4 of these gentlemen are now no longer with us. Cliff Dockerman, who is just one of my favorite Rotarians. And then you've got Carlos Canseco. Carlos Canseco is considered the father of Rotary. He was the one that got Rotary behind polio eradication. And then, of course, Rick King. Now, I was talking about boots on the ground. So we have the Rotary flag, so many places where we do distributions. We put the Rotary logo on the wheelchair, and our clubs here will interact with the clubs in that particular area, whether it's Uganda, South Africa, Peru. Everywhere I go, I tell people this is one of the coolest things about being a Rotary when you're international, being a Rotarian. It opens up doors. You immediately have a connection with all those people in that club. They invite you, you do social things together, they tell you about their projects, and often my club will get involved with a project down in Mexico or Guatemala or wherever it might be, because you've got this relationship now. I call it like, it's almost like a sister city or sister district. And we actually, my district 5160 is a sister city of 4130 down in Monterey. So Rotary is just a very important, it's a group that helps us every step of the way. You know, we also work with corporations and churches, and, you know, we're non-denominational. We work with people from across the world, but Rotary has always played a huge role. I see this all the time. I mean, you see people, they come in with motorcycles in Vietnam, and they'll stack sometimes 4 motorcycles up. They got wagons. Sometimes they bring an old school bus and the people can't come, so they load up 30 wheelchairs in a bus to take to a village that's a couple hours away. So this is not an uncommon sight. Vietnam, I'll be going to Vietnam in October, and this trip is going to have about a half a dozen veterans, Vietnam veterans. And I got a couple of pictures I'll show in a little bit. And the Vietnam veterans going back to Vietnam is one of the most special experiences I had. I'm friends with a lot of these gentlemen, and we've had a couple of women go, but it's been primarily the guys. And a lot of them were scared to go back. They hadn't been back in 50 years. And they didn't know how the people were going to treat them, what they were going to encounter. Every one of them loved the trip. They got emotional. We went to orphanages. We lifted people that had their legs blown off by landmines, put them into a wheelchair. We visited an Agent Orange museum one time. And so many of our vets have the after effects of Agent Orange. The cancer rate in Vietnam veterans, I think, is triple the normal population. And a lot of these guys will say they were out in the bush and they were sprayed with DDT, Agent Orange, or not DDT. Agent Orange is about 100 times more powerful than DDT. So main causes. The thing that's scaring me right now is diabetes. I was in Puerto Vallarta in April with about 20 people. We distributed wheelchairs. The first wheelchair distribution, we had about 50 people in front of us. I would say 1/4 of those people were missing one or both legs, all diabetes. And it's rising so fast just because of their diet, their lack of knowledge. Then I was in Nepal a month later. And in Nepal, it's the rate of cerebral palsy. It's enormous. And they said the women have almost no education about the time of birth, what to eat, drink during their pregnancy. They don't see a doctor. They might have a midwife delivering a baby. The baby's kept in the womb too long. Oxygen blood gets cut off, and the baby is born with some form of neuromuscular problem or brain defect. And we have these specialized wheelchairs. We had taken 20 last time. The guy said, I need 80. And he found recipients for all 80 of these specialized wheelchairs. And a lot of it's education. The more that Rotary can do, just helping these developing nations on diabetes, what can prevent diabetes? And then what can prevent, what we do to help maternal care? How can we make that baby better when the baby's delivered? You know, providing more medical care, more prenatal expertise with people coming in, because if you do that, it's going to probably cost you about 1/10 of what it would do afterwards, trying to take care of all these children. Landmines. I talked about Afghanistan. So over here is Angola. I have not been to Angola, but they say 20% of the population has suffered from violence, landmines, and this image is not that uncommon, seeing women with one leg. This is Ukraine. This was taken before the gentleman I referenced is over there. But I think they work with the Rotary Club there, but a couple of the people are from the United States. So Peru is one of my favorite places in the world. I've been there about, I think, 4 or 5 times. And this picture right here, we're up at Cusco. I'm sure a lot of people in the room have been in Cusco. So we're delivering wheelchairs at 11,000 feet just outside of Machu Picchu. And there's a square there. All the Latin American towns are built with a square with the church on one side and a town hall. Everything's on that square. So they bring in 100 recipients. Most of them were elderly. And they have the mayor and the vice mayor and all these important people, plus the military. We had 100 soldiers. So the soldiers all stood behind a wheelchair and they raced around the whole block. The soldiers were marching, they had music going, and they would push the wheelchairs around this square. Then they lined up all 100 recipients in front of the mayor. Then the Rotarians came out with sacks of potatoes. Potatoes are very special in Peru. And they gave every one of these recipients a sack of potatoes. Then a Rotarian would walk out with a handmade blanket, a really nice blanket because you're at 11,000 feet. And they presented each recipient with a blanket. And it was just really neat to see how Rotary was treating all these people. And again, the age. Half of our recipients are old. And again, I'm 68, so I don't think old is until I hit 80. But you go to these countries and at age 60, they're worn out. I mean, their bodies are pretty shot. They've been working at high altitudes, 12 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, hard manual labor. So infirmity starts at a very early age in these countries. I mentioned about changing a life, that just taking that person, putting them into a wheelchair, their life has changed and all the caregivers' lives are changed. So this was another Rotary group, and they hiked up this area. This woman had not been able to walk, and the guy walked about, I think, a half a mile to deliver the wheelchair. And we've gone up on trains, delivering wheelchairs at 3,000 feet, 6,000 feet, 10,000 feet, up and down Peru. We've gone out to islands and given wheelchairs. We've gone down coast by boat. And then we just took 3 wheelchairs to Puerto Vallarta. 2 of the guys were blind and were missing legs from diabetes. And so, they couldn't really go anywhere. So we brought the wheelchair directly to them. We've been in soccer fields, stadiums. We've gone to churches delivering wheelchairs. We've done about 50 different things over the years. We've taken them on canoes and taken them to a remote area. And I've come across this many times where somebody is missing the lower part of their body and they use blocks to crawl. So this guy came in and I asked a translator, I said, how did he lose his legs? And I figured the answer might be diabetes. And he goes, severe arthritis. The translator asked the man. And I'm going, God, severe arthritis. I said, I've got arthritis. I certainly don't want to end up like that. But, unfortunately, this is the way it is in many parts of the world. I mentioned the veterans. So we help Honor Flight. We just gave 20 wheelchairs to the Bay Area Honor Flight. Everybody familiar with Honor Flight? They take all the veterans back to Washington, D.C. for 3 days. And these guys were pretty much all in their 90s, mid 90s, whatever. Well, the World War II guys are basically gone. And I love the World War II guys. Then they did Korea. Well, Korea was only 5 years after the World War II. So now they're starting to do Vietnam. These gentlemen are all World War II. And then I mentioned the Vietnam vets going back to Vietnam and helping people. And that's the lower picture. So the whole back, I think we had about 12 or 13 Vietnam vets. And I'm not sure what his amputations were. It could have been diabetes. This was from somebody else that went on a trip. Again, very common, old people being helped. This guy was some type of a cowboy. His body was all beat up. He couldn't walk. And then his daughters were flanking him. And young people, we encourage young people, just like all Rotarians. The more we teach young people about philanthropy, the better they're going to be. When you instill that in them at an early age, they're going to carry that the rest of their lives. So we encourage people, whether they have a 16-year-old daughter or an 8-year-old son, bring them on a trip and let them see what it's like. And they often will interact with the children of the person that's receiving the wheelchair. And this was a saying that we always loved from my father. He would always, when he gave somebody a wheelchair, they would bless him. They would hold his hand, they would grab him and hug him. And he would say, all we want in return is a smile. Your smile is worth everything. And so this is basically for 5160. We're doing a district grant, so it's similar to what you guys have done. I know Richard got a district grant 2 years ago, year and a half ago, whenever it was. And so we're doing the same thing. So I'll ignore those slides. And if I got a couple of minutes, I'll be happy to open it up for questions. I could go on for a long time. I will talk about earthquakes for a second. I talked about violence and war being a huge cause. Gunshot victims, we see that all the time. Car accidents, that's another huge one, especially in Latin America. And then earthquakes. I mean, we are going to have 6.5 to 7.2 earthquakes periodically. And when they hit our country, hopefully not for a while, it causes a lot of damage, but not like what you see in Iran, China, certain parts of the Middle East, Latin America. When an earthquake hits there, you see that these buildings lack reinforcing steel and they pancake and people get crushed when those things collapse. And so that's the scary thing. And in certain parts of the world, you'll often see 25,000 people killed, the one we had in Haiti, but it's the people that are injured. When those buildings fall down, people get hurt. So with that, any questions? Okay. Oh, I did have 2 quick stories that I want to finish with. I'm sorry, I just forgot those. So one story is my father sees this guy come in and he's carrying another man. And he comes in Africa, they're down in Zimbabwe or somewhere. And the guy comes in and my father goes, "Oh, is this your brother, your father?" And he says, "No, this is just a man that I met." And he goes, "Well, how far did you carry him?" "Oh," he goes, "I carried him about 4 miles." And he said, "Well, who is he?" "I don't know. I saw him on the side of the road." And he said, "Can you carry me? You know, there's going to be a place for wheelchairs." And so he picked him up and he carried him. And so that's kind of the spirit of Rotary. You know, you'll do whatever you can to help somebody. Then there's another gentleman that a lot of you know, Don Ruth, and his son Josh, who's been in a wheelchair his whole life. And Don told me a story. He says they've done distributions all over the world. They usually do at least 2 a year. And he was in Pleasanton North for a long time. And he's at the end of the day, he and his son would talk about the 75 recipients they met that day. And Josh would look at his dad and he said, "Dad, we did miracles today." And Josh would look at him and said, "Son, we didn't do miracles. Only God does miracles. We just do good stuff." And so to you Rotarians, keep doing good stuff. Education, water, polio eradication, whatever it is. Thank you.
David, we'll start off with an early one, easy one. Wow, what a great presentation. How many wheelchairs has the foundation given out since its founding? Total.
1.2 million.
1.2 million.
Oh.
And you said that Rotary has been involved in about a quarter of those?
Yes.
So that's a lot of wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Wow, congratulations.
I had a question. You were talking about diabetes
Yes.
seeming to be more and more prevalent around the world. Is Rotary kind of getting involved in that? I know polio is kind of a bigger issue, but I'm thinking different countries for these people to be losing limbs and so forth, and educational outreach. Is that something that high up in Rotary world that they're looking
I've
at?
seen it at international conferences where there's been programs to educate people about diabetes. I saw it in Australia, at Melbourne. I don't know of any local Rotary clubs that are focusing on it. Like I said, it's much more severe outside our area. When you go down to Latin America, that's probably one of the worst in the world. And Fiji, part of it's genetics, part of it's diet, part of it's lack of education. But in Fiji, they said there's 800 amputations every year because of diabetes. And Fiji's not that big of a country. So the educational part is, proper diet, exercise. We have a lot of it in East County, way out in Antioch, Oakley, Brentwood. You got a much higher Hispanic population out there. And so part of it is genetic. Yes.
I hope you're going to ask about Nepal, because I had one about no.
But I would thank you very much for this presentation. It was super. I don't know who was in the club 20 odd years ago, probably half this membership here. But 20 years ago, this club raised only about $19,000 to take wheelchairs into Africa. I can't remember where, probably Nigeria. And in doing so, there are 7 of us from this club. As a focus to raise this money, we went to climb Kilimanjaro in Africa. That's all. Just like people to know that.
Well, thank you very much.
And I had one more question. You were talking about Nepal and they, earthquakes and education and stuff, and not just Nepal, other countries. But I know we're not the only group out there that tries, to help these other countries. Is there any?
Nepal's a very poor country.
Yeah.
We were in Kathmandu and then just outside of it. It's poor.
Well, and our Rotary partners with a lot of people, but is this an opportunity for Rotary to partner with someone to help maybe bring a lot of this to the forefront, to maybe, help make change?
Yeah, I think definitely partnering with a Rotary club in country. There were, I think, 4 Rotary clubs in Kathmandu that I saw. I didn't meet any of them. We didn't have time. But when I looked up, I always look up where the Rotary clubs are. So I don't know how the sizes and exactly what projects they work on, but we always try to partner up, my Rotary club, whenever we're doing a project. That gives you the boots on the ground. But I think diabetes is a very global, massive problem. But like I said, when I go to Latin America now, I don't see polio, but I see the cases of diabetes rising fast. Yes.
Oh, Dave, this was just phenomenal. I'm like tearing up and I want to go on a distribution. And I'm like, when you do distribution, do you obviously you must invite some people to come, but mostly I hear about Rotarians going on distributions. And I think Richard said you're doing one in September. Yeah. And so if we're not volunteering through Rotary, how would we maybe go on one that is the Wheelchair Foundation itself?
Well, we generally do a couple a year. The next one, as I mentioned, is going to be in Monterey. And it's basically a Rotary trip. So a non-Rotarian might get a little bored because we do social events with Rotarians. We do a hands-on work day where we might paint a building, we might plant trees in Monterey, and we work side by side with Monterey Rotarians. Brad Howard is organizing this trip.
Okay.
And Brad makes sure that you interact a lot with the local Rotarians. That's part of being an international Rotarian. And non-Rotarians can go, and a couple of them have, but one of them at the end of the trip said, man, he goes, I felt like I was inundated with Rotary stuff for the last 4 days. So it's better if you're a Rotarian. But we went down to Puerto Vallarta, and 2/3 of our group, I think we only had like 4 people that were Rotarians. The others were non-Rotarians. And we worked with Rotary clubs there, and everybody had a great experience. So you don't have to be a Rotarian.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much for your great presentation today.
Okay.
And I was looking at the wheelchairs committed or delivered, and almost 500,000 have been in China. What is the main issue there? Is it health issues? It's certainly not war, I would think.
Well, the
Poor
biggest
diet?
issue is there's no shipping cost, and they put in half the money.
Oh,
They're
okay.
called CDPFs, and they're civil societies to help disabled people. So every province in China has one of these, and it's not just disability like mobility. It can be blindness, deafness, whatever the disability is. And these people don't get a lot of help, but these organizations are there to help. So they put in half the money, so it makes it much cheaper for us. And there's no delivery expense. Transportation is very, very expensive. I don't know if anybody's been in the shipping business. It tripled during COVID. And it was taking 8 months. All the containers were stopped. And so you couldn't get things shipped. And when you did, you had to pay through the nose for it. So shipping is basically half the cost. It's very expensive to ship today.
All right. So Jeff on Zoom, we've got. All right, Hank.
David, I just want to say that to answer Kathy's question, when we went to Mexico 2 years ago, a Rotarian brought some people who are not Rotarians to the wheelchair distribution.
Then they joined?
And one of the women is the current president of a Rotary Club this year in Fremont.
Okay,
So-
great. You always hope that happens.
All right, Hank.
All right, thank you very much.
Did you unmute yourself, Hank?
Yes. In the last year, how many wheelchairs were sent from the Bay Area
That's a
alone?
good question. I'm looking. Oh, on Zoom.
He's on Zoom.
Oh, we have.
Yes,
I think about 15,000.
thank you.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'd like to congratulate you on your presentation. I think you showed us what Rotary International can be. And for myself, it was been Polio Plus and the ability to work out, reach out there. And I see the Wheelchair Foundation as being almost a subset of the Polio Plus initiative. Maybe it should be the other way around. I'm not sure. Several years ago, we were able to produce funds for a large number of chairs. I actually spearheaded that.
Thank you very much.
And I'd like to hear maybe from President Mark and how we're going to match that initiative that we did back then.
All righty.
Thank you.
So, very good. Well, David, thank you very much. Okay, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. All right. Don't let him get out of the room. So David, you've got to make hard choices now. We have to give you either olive oil, white wine, or red wine is our tradition. So which of those three? So that's a corkscrew. So red or white? I like that. I didn't realize it. Here we go. Here we go. Let's look like we're friendly. All right.
And I
You want
want
to
to
be-
present you with this book. My dad wrote about autobiography about 12 years ago. So
Very good.
it's
Here
a
we go.
fast read. There's a lot of stuff in there on Rotary.
All right, here we go. All right, so you said red wine, right?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. All right, let's get our, make sure which one I got. Oops, nope, the other one. The other one. Here, there we go. All right. And then finally, on behalf of our club, we'd like to give a $500 donation to wheelchairs. So thank you very much for
Thank you
coming
very
out.
much.
All right. All right, folks. That's it for today. Let's wrap things up and we'll see you all. Oh, we've got a number. Boy, I'm glad we have people to watch this. What is the official number, sir? 4747. Is that correct?
Oh, Dennis.
All right. Thank you very much. And remember, next week, where are we, folks? Del Val Winery? Yes.